Jesus said, "What my Father has given me is greater than all else. No one can snatch it out of the Father's hand." As I begin today, I'd inform you that the message that I composed for today was done so with our graduating seniors in mind, our high school graduates who were with us at our first service this morning. We have 19 young people who will be graduating next weekend. And so I kind of crafted my message today with them in mind, but it translates to all of us. So kind of keep that in the back of your head this morning. What I tried to do, what I want to do with you, is drop a little bit of knowledge on you right now. And it's not terribly deep, but it's terribly important to remember. And it's this: no one gets to decide who loves them. You do not get to decide who loves you. That's not a theory. That's a stone-cold fact. No one gets to decide who loves them. Absolutely, there are all sorts of things that you can do and probably have tried to do over the course of living to make yourself more attractive, more desirable, more enticing, more whatever, to someone whose love you covet. But the fact still remains that no one gets to decide who loves them. That is always and only the choice of the one offering their love, which is what makes it such a precious gift and can make it at the very same time incredibly annoying. Which brings us to the recognition that today is indeed Mother's Day, okay? How about that for a segue? When you first came into the world, all of you, kicking, screaming, slimy, and frankly kind of gross, in that first moment, someone loved you. And to her, you were greater than all else that had been placed in her arms. That love may have even led her to place you in other arms, because she knew she couldn't give you the life she wanted for you. But be that as it may, it doesn't change the fact that from that first minute, from that first breath that you took, someone's heart was full and broken because of love for you. And you didn't choose it. You didn't choose it. And since that day, someone has made it their mission to love you no matter how you happen to feel about it, which, as I said before, can be one and the same time incredibly comforting and at the same time amazingly annoying, particularly when you do not want to be the center of someone's attentions, right? Maybe the most annoying thing about being loved like this, frankly, is the fact that it can make us feel kind of passive, like we're not the ones in control. And Lord, how we love to convince ourselves that we're in control of all things all the time when it comes to our living. This fourth Sunday of the Easter season is traditionally called Good Shepherd's Sunday, and that's because usually our gospel lesson for today is taken from John's telling of the Jesus story, because John is the only gospel writer that employs this image over and over again of himself as a shepherd and his disciples, his followers, as his sheep. Now, I think over the course of years, it's safe to say that a lot of people have grown increasingly less fond of this imagery because we don't necessarily want to think of ourselves as sheep, right? Mindlessly following someone when we think of ourselves as acting autonomously, in control over our own ideas, our own motivations, and especially our own destinies. Our culture has even assigned this pejorative term, sheeple, to people who act like sheep, right? Mindlessly giving their devotion to someone. Sheeple. People who act like sheep. Who wants to be called that, right? But I'm becoming more and more convinced that when Jesus uses the term sheep to describe his disciples, he's not describing their behavior nearly as much as he's referring to his own behavior as their shepherd. What does the good shepherd do? Well, what does Jesus say the good shepherd does? Lays down his life for the sheep, right? Regards those sheep as greater than anything else that the Father has put into his hands. Greater than anything else. Worth more even than his own life. And the sheep do not get to decide who loves them, who takes care of them, who protects them. The only thing the sheep do is accept and live in the love, care, and protection of the shepherd. The image does work then. It seems that people are constantly looking for examples of such sacrificial, unearned love to convince themselves that it can actually really exist, even for us, right? And so we look outside our own experience and we look to the world of nature around us. I don't know if you recall this, but back in the day before social media really kind of took off, Facebook and Snapchat and all that stuff, pretty much email was the way people kind of just spewed their thoughts out. You know, if you got on someone's email list and you got these emails constantly, I call it my aunt email group, because my aunts would always send me these inspirational stories, right? And I have a file of them, and this one is in the file sent to me years ago by one of my aunts. And she was just so touched by this story, she had to share it with me because she knows I'm a pastor, okay? You know the type of story. This is the way it goes. It says, an article in National Geographic several years ago provided a penetrating picture of God's protective shepherding love. After a forest fire in Yellowstone National Park in 1989, forest rangers began their trek up the mountain to assess the inferno's damage. One ranger found a bird, literally petrified in ashes, perched statuesquely on the ground at the base of a tree, and somewhat sickened by the sight, he knocked over the bird with a stick, and when he struck it, 3 tiny chicks scurried out from under their dead mother's wings. The loving mother, keenly aware of impending disaster, had carried her offspring to the base of the tree and had gathered them under her wings, instinctively knowing that the toxic smoke would rise. She could have flown to safety, but she refused to abandon her babies. And when the blaze had arrived and the heat had scorched her small body, the mother had remained steadfast because she had been willing to die, so those under the cover of her wings would live. Beautiful example, isn't it? If only it were true. Alas. The fact-checking website called Snopes, maybe some of you are familiar with this, reports that no such article was ever printed in National Geographic. And they actually have National Geographic's response to this article, which had been circulating for years, and this is what they wrote. They said, we've been getting a lot of emails about this story. It's an inspirational story, which is why we regret to have to debunk it. The incident was never reported in National Geographic, nor did it ever happen in Yellowstone, according to the park's ornithologist, who adds that it doesn't ring true of bird behavior anywhere. This story about a mother bird's self-sacrifice originated as an inspirational story, first published in 1945 in Reader's Digest. And in that parable from long ago, the bird was not a wild creature, but rather a hen living on a farm. And as the fire engulfs the farm, she gathers her chicks under her wings and protects them, giving her life for theirs. National Geographic goes on to say that although we can observe the actions of animals, we cannot assume their behaviors are based on the same motives and emotions as our own. Some animals spend a great deal of time caring for and nurturing their young. Others simply pause long enough to give birth or drop their eggs and move on their way. Some animals will protect their young at the risk of their own lives. Others will eat their own offspring if food is in short supply. Even when an animal does exhibit a seemingly human-like behavior, such as the one described in this story, we cannot know whether the animal was truly motivated by an emotion, such as love, whether it made a conscious choice to sacrifice its life, or whether it was merely acting out of instinct. So, here's where I'm going with that. We don't need to make up inspirational stories to example what such sacrificial love looks like, because every single one of us has been blessed somewhere along the line with someone, usually someones, who decide to love and care for us with absolutely no solicitation on our part. Someone who has decided to love us, whether it's been moms or dads or grandmas or grandpas or siblings or teachers or mentors or neighbors or friends. So many who have treated us as though we were actually gifts to them. But I'm going to tell you this. Finally, no matter how much or how little you have experienced the attentions, care, and love of others, there is one. There is one who regards you as greater than anything else that God has put into his hands. You. Greater than anything else. Imagine that. Some might see that as simply being a passive recipient of a gift, but I don't think so. I think there's power in it. Power in the knowledge that you are loved by God this way. Power to now go out into the world and to bless other people with the same undeserved gift that you have received. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Amen.